Travis Wingate, so we've got some time. So let's catch up on Sunday school lesson that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints skip in their manuals. Genesis chapters 34 to 36. And as I've told you in this Sunday's lesson, these are kind of important to our eternal salvation. And so the church makes a big blunder in removing them. If it's in Scripture, it's important. So, to sum up at the beginning, chapter 34 is the rape of Dinah. And if you're wondering, how does that have to do with our eternal salvation? Because there's a couple of brothers who lose their birthright blessing backup status, as I told you in the other video. And 35, Rebecca dies. Rebecca. Gotta remember, Hebrew doesn't have vowels. And so we, in our modern day, add vowels in order to give speech to the text, which is pictorial in Paleo-Hebrew and Aramaic. But those meanings have gone extinct, and I'm the one who deciphered them. And then 36 is Esau's genealogy. Kind of important when you learn about Jacob's usurping of the birthright blessing in regards to the coming Christ of the latter days, as Esau's firstborn birthright blessing son as listed. Amen, huh? Sun God, huh? Isn't that interesting? So let us begin, now that I've already given you all the answers. So I'm also the one, for example, facsimile number 1 has no Egyptian hieroglyphic texts. The text are what is contained in the Egyptian sign lists for the various characters in text. And so you will not see any of the characters in facsimile 1, for example, because you won't find them in text. The plant, yeah, you'll see that in text, because that is used for translation in text. But if it's translatable in text, why is it no longer translatable in facsimile number 1? Which then would suggest, well, those other characters that are not in the sign list, they too can be translated. Why aren't they getting translated either? And so, welcome to me. I figured it out and deciphered those remaining characters that Egyptologists just skipped over and claim they know everything about translation. They lie to preserve their jobs. So, and then once you realize that those can be translated, then you see how the Bible stories are a version of those translations. And so when Joseph Smith says, well, it's Abraham on the altar and the priest of Elkanah who's trying to sacrifice him, oh, okay, Joseph Smith understood this too. And so when you go over his scriptures, the first vision, Nephi coming to Moroni about Egyptian gold plates, now you begin to see what Joseph Smith was doing and why it's not accurate history. In section 45 in the Doctrine and Covenants, oh, that scripture in this parable form that is being done in the Bible as a translation from the Egyptian documents. So it's amazing what happens when you actually do scientific research rather than just your biased beliefs based on what you were told to believe. So 34, Shechem, the defiler. So Dinah is the 14th child of Jacob, the usurper, and this goes to the Egyptian story of the second death of Osiris, in which Set finds out that his body that was nailed in the coffin for the first death, that went to Lebanon, Beirut, Lebanon, which was Babel, had been returned to Egypt by the missionaries of the wife of Osiris, Isis, represents the church, and she restored his body back to life. And so Set, realizing that his throne was now in jeopardy with the return of Osiris, this time chopped up his body into 14 pieces. Now, other stories talk about 42 pieces for the different provinces in Egypt and the governors over those provinces, but the story of 14 corresponds obviously with the house of Israel and how the Bible wrote their story based on that version of the Egyptian story. And so the 14 pieces were then dumped into the River Nile again and then scattered throughout all the world through the oceanic currents. And Isis again sends out missionaries as the church representation. The bride is the church of the bridegroom, who is the Christ. And Osiris is the one who is died. And missionaries go out to gather the body of Osiris. And here we've got the broken bread of the sacrament with the blood for red wine is supposed to be. And that's where vampirism got started, was a devolution of the Catholic devolution of things, and so people just keep devolving religion from its origin in Egypt over the millennia. But nonetheless, it has to do with humans. Blood. The blood, mother. Blood. I've been wanting to watch that. The series with the movies. And the whole purpose this time was that when Isis assembled the body parts, Dinah is missing, or Dinah is there rather than a 14th son. And if you're unsure of what boys have and girls don't, it's boys are blue and girls are pink. And so Isis had to form the blue in order to conceive. And there's two different versions of that conception. One is she is in her female form and has sex. The other is she turns into a hawk falcon bird like Horus and hovers above them, and an immaculate conception, which is where we get the sign in the heaven from as well. The birds representing the constellations and the movement of the celestial bodies in the sky, in heaven. and so it's one and the same meaning, even though it's two different story versions of it. The one with Isis turning into the bird is to include the last day's sign in heaven when it is to occur, which Isaiah then gets that from, and John in Revelation 12 gets that from, and gives us the sign in the heaven date of that, which is 23rd September 2017, if you've not been following my channel. And so, Dinah. And it's important to understand that Dinah does not have a legitimate family lineage to carry on with this rape. So let's get into it now that we've given you the background. And with the sacrament ritual, yes, Mormons gather at a congregation, have this sacrament of the broken body given to them internally, for which they are to give birth of the bloodline for the Christ to restore the church. So Joseph Smith knew all this and knew that he was going to be assassinated, and that his church would be usurped by the great and abominable church, and that through the great and abominable church would come the Mormon Christ who would restore Joseph's church. It's real simple, using the basic pattern, and yet because of Christianity created by Constantine, everybody thinks that that's the weird thing. that religious belief is wrong and heathen and pagan. No. No. A created name or a created word for the nature and character, and turning a fictional character into a real historical character, that's the weird thing. As he successfully deceived many billions of people over 2 millennia already with that con that he pulled to conquer Christianity, which were originally Messianic Jews. Alright, so Dinah, the daughter of Leah. That's also important to understand. She is of the birthright blessing mother. And in Egyptian, as we also learn from Abraham chapter 1, the bloodline needs to be carried out through the son and daughter in the family. Dinah is the only daughter through which the bloodline can carry through. So Reuben is her firstborn blessing son, birthright blessing son. He technically, if we were to use the Egyptian stories, would be the one to marry Dinah to solidify his birthright blessing status as the leader of the tribe for the birthright line, the bloodline of the dynasty. But all hell breaks loose. And let's see, Dinah goes out to be with other women, other girls like her, and she's getting sick and tired of her brothers. But Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her. You see that? He's the prince of the great and abominable church. See how they're setting this up? She's supposed to marry Reuben. She comes across another prince of another tribe saw her, he took her and lay with her and defiled her. It's interesting how they don't say know her. And so he raped her. Even though they don't say rape, they say defile instead. And his soul clave unto Dinah, and he loved the damsel, and spake kindly unto the damsel. And if you don't understand what it means by defiled, is that she belonged to Reuben. The author will not tell you this. He can't. And so she now has got potentially a future son through this other prince of the great and abominable church. And that's where you see a pattern. Joseph is not the brother of Mary. Joseph isn't even married to her. He didn't even have sex with her, and it's some other guy's baby in Mary's womb. And we're told that his name is not Emmanuel as prophesied, it's now Jesus. So you see the similar pattern as different people are uncomfortable with the symbolism for the latter days. And it's just simply great and abominable church brings forth the one who would restore the original religion. Jacob usurped it. It needs to be restored. The church of Esau needs to be restored from the church of Jacob, the usurper. And here we have a dilemma. Dinah, the bride, or the fiancée of Reuben, is raped by another prince of another great and abominable church. So you can see the pattern being played out here. And so Shechem talks to his father, "Get me this damsel to wife." Notice he doesn't say woman, because women are those who have had babies. She hasn't had a baby yet. She's an immaculately conceived virgin. And so father, Jacob, hears that his daughter was raped, and his sons were out working in the field, and waited till they came home to share with them the news. And so Hamor, the father, went to Jacob to commune with him. The sons of Jacob came out of the field when they heard it. Yeah, they were kind of upset. He had wrought folly in Israel. You mean Jacob? Oh, his new name is Israel. Yah, Prince of God. The bloodline for the Christ, not let God prevail. And so Hamor is talking, saying, "My son loves her. He longs for your daughter." Well, he raped her. He got what he wanted, but he wants her to wife. And so, making marriages with us, and give your daughters unto us, and take our daughters unto you. So apparently there are other daughters that we're not being told about, according to the author of this text. Or Hamor didn't realize there are no other daughters. It depends. None of this is real. None of these are historical characters. This is apocalyptic literature for the latter days, trying to teach us prophecies for the Latter-day Christ. You're supposed to be getting out your checklist here. Because we already learned the mother of the Latter-day Christ is Judith. Because Esau marries Judith. Okay, so... ye shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade ye herein. And so it's a king-on-king peace pact where they give each other their daughters for the sons and unite as one kingdom, so that the daughter of the foreign king can give birth to children who can grow up to be heirs to the one kingdom as they're going to merge together. This is what was done anciently. Shechem said unto her father, Shechem's now speaking, let me find grace in your eyes, and what ye shall say unto me I will give. So he's saying, how much is she worth to you? The bride price. And so the sons of Jacob are the ones who answer instead of Jacob. But they were doing it deceitfully. And they said unto them, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised. The uncircumcision, or the circumcision, is the exposing of the crown. Crown having to do with the prince to take over the throne of his father, the king. All symbolic. Our whole bodies, whether you're male or female, are symbolic of what's being discussed anciently in the cultures and traditions, etc. And so circumcision is after that manner, that you, as a baby boy, are born and you're circumcised to expose the crown that, yes, you are a prince. And so all Mormon boys are princes to grow up to become kings unto the Most High God hereafter to rule and reign in the house of Israel forever. See how that works? Let's see. Then we will give you our daughters unto you. And so they're saying all you adult males need to be circumcised. We will give you our daughters. So that's what's going on. Is the author is saying that it's not the daughters of Jacob, it's the daughters of the sons of Jacob. Is where we get extra girls from. Let's see. And so Hamor and Shechem, unaware of the intense pain, which is why it's done as a baby, because the shock and horror from the pain is suppressed in our memories. So we don't remember it when we're older. But there's also symbolism involved as well with that whole process. Alright, and so they came to the gate of their city and told the guys, hey, we made a deal, you guys gotta have your cut off. Okay. And we'll get their women. Yay! Let's do it! And it came to pass the third day, when they were sore, to say the least, Simeon and Levi Now remember, it originally said all the brothers were deceptive here and plotted what they were going to do, but only Simeon and Levi. And this is important because it's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. That line for contestants for Miss America. If the Miss America does porn, she's disqualified, and the crown goes to the runner-up. And likewise down the line. They have that's why it's a contest, and there are runner-ups. Just in case. So, and they slew Hamor and Shechem. They destroyed a dynasty here. And this is symbolic with Moses and the Exodus. Pharaoh's son dies with creeping death, and Pharaoh hands over the kingdom to Moses. And this is the symbolism that's involved here, the pattern that is similar. And then the rest of the sons came and slew the rest of them and spoiled the city and all that. And they took their sheep, oxen, asses, everything. Took out their wealth. Similar to Moses, they get to, all the house of Israel takes the wealth of Egypt and goes to the promised land of Zion in southern Illinois. They even take the children and the wives captive also. So that's also interesting. Okay. And Jacob tells Simeon and Levi, this is important, he's the one who's going to give the blessing to each of them later on. You have troubled me to make me to stink among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and I bring few in number, I being few in number. They shall gather themselves together against me and slay me, and I shall be destroyed, I and my house. So he's concerned that he's going to be retaliated against by the other kingdoms for what they did. Daddy, your daughter was raped. You should focus on her, not about you. And so the sons reply, should he deal with our sister as with an harlot? So, remember, the great and abominable church is referred to by John in Revelation as the whore. So you can see the comparisons here. Alright, so let me stop at this moment and we'll come back to 35. One more thing to add that I hope I can find the right place to insert it into. I've got several segments going on here. Is that Shechem and the father Hamor are representatives of the great and abominable church. Thus, the false Christ, prophet, seer, revelator, translator, and the successor to the throne. And the house of Israel destroys them. And the false Christ dies, as well as the son dies as well, Shechem, as their kingdom is northern Israel, the lost 10 tribes of Israel. And seeing how that applies into the latter days is where you get the various scriptures talking about the false prophet of the latter days dying and the kingdom usurped. So Moses, as I get to in the final segment, parallels. He confronts Pharaoh, who is the false prophet, the false Christ, the false seer, revelator, translator of the great and abominable church. Let the people go. I'm going to restore the kingdom of Joseph Smith. And he says no, and then creeping death wipes out the dynasty, and Pharaoh hands it over to Moses. And that is different because Pharaoh is also supposed to die rather than continue to live, as Hamor dies with his son Shechem, who is the capital city name for the northern Israel, the house of Israel, the 10 tribes. Jerusalem being the capital for Judah and Benjamin. And so, yeah, interesting. And and so, yeah, by applying it to our day, I hope you caught on, because Joseph Smith also talks about Jupiter doing battle with the false prophet, Christ, seer, revelator, translator, in section 85, verse 8. While that man who was called of God and appointed, that putteth his hand forth to steady the ark of God, which is his duty if he's the legitimate one, but if he's not, shall fall by the shaft of death like a tree, the cedar of Lebanon, the oak, that we've discussed in this video, that is smitten by a vivid shaft of lightning, the symbol of Zeus, or Jupiter, who is the one born out of Virgo with Bethlehem. And so, Deuteronomy 18. And they do not have it. No, they do not footnote it to Deuteronomy 18. Naughty, naughty. Naughty, naughty. You're deceiving Mormons. Naughty, naughty. Of course, it wouldn't have mattered because David Gaunt, when we got to that part in Deuteronomy, it's Jesus. Jesus. Even though he knew of Avraham Gileadi, and James Baker was telling me about Avraham Gileadi, how he was excommunicated, knew Hebrew and stuff. But Avraham didn't know either. Alrighty, I think that fills it in. Another pattern that came to my mind during this break is that of early in the beginning of Genesis, about the sons of God marrying the daughters of men. Well, Joseph Smith translation changes that to the daughters of the sons of men, or sons of God, sorry, marry the sons of men. Exactly parallel with this story. Sons of God are likened unto the house of Israel, the sons of the house of Israel, and Dinah is the daughter of the son of God, Jacob, who usurped the birthright blessing to become such. And when you liken those scriptures unto yourself, you have to be careful to do it correctly. Because women are already on edge because of the mistranslation in the Bible that Eve was the one who caused the fall. And if Eve didn't do that, everything would have been fine. And Paul the redactor of Paul jumps in and says it's the woman's fault for the fall. Along with she should keep Solon in church. She should grow her hair long. Oh, I love long hair. Nonetheless, Book of Mormon. Adam fell that man might be. Do I need to repeat that? Adam fell that man might be. Should I repeat it again? Just in case there's some who may not have caught on yet to what our true Mormon doctrine is, for which my bishop said, why are you bothering to come to church if you're going to criticize the leaders of the church and support Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon? And so if you need extra assistance, I refer you to section 29 of the Doctrine and Covenants, verses 36 and 40. Adam fell that man might be. That's our doctrine. And yet, you see that Dinah, as in the case with the daughters of the sons of God, fall. The daughters of the sons of God fall willingly, but Dinah is raped. She meant to go play with the girls, and the prince just happened to be there. Was that his harem of fiancés? Most likely. Most likely. But to liken it to our day, Joseph's church was usurped. It no longer exists on the face of the earth. It needs to be restored. I've been doing all those videos correcting those who are popular among ex-Mormons, who think that, oh yeah, the church has been lying to us, this is the truth, and the whole church is a fraud, and we want nothing to do with it, we're just going to criticize it and help people with their faith crises, because nobody did research to find the truth in the first place, because the church won't let us. And I keep trying to tell ex-Mormons, you gotta put the pieces of the puzzle together. You can't just take the information with what you're told to believe, like the church tells us to believe what they tell us. Just because D. Michael Quinn wrote Mormonism and the Magic Worldview doesn't mean that what he says is correct. Because all of September 6 tried to harmonize and merge together as a unified front the stuff that they were finding out about with what the church has been telling us this whole time. And so, rocking a hat? Well, we told you it was by the gift and power of God. The only problem is, Joseph didn't have anything to do with the composition of the Book of Mormon. He didn't write it, he didn't dictate it. And if you're going, what? Linguists have scientifically determined that the author of the major portion of the Book of Mormon, thus not the 116 pages, is Sidney Rigdon. And let me find it for you. Cool. My Who is Mormon and critic, Travis Wayne Goodsell, that we should know him, has had 43 views in 16 hours. Not a breakout, but high for the low numbers because of the suppression, because of the video I just uploaded earlier. Alright, so authorship, who wrote the Book of Mormon, and I think it's volume or part 4, I believe. It's the Ex-Mormon Foundation, and so as ex-Mormons, you should know about these guys, don't you? Don't you? Okay. Centre Place did authorship of the Book of Mormon. They streamed it a year ago. Has 10,000 views. It's an hour and a half, but apparently it's just a person talking about Joseph Smith as the author. Whereas 30,000, and so I'm assuming all of you know? I don't know, maybe not, because there are 16 million who have been baptized on the records of the church, as we now know that the majority of us have no longer got participation with the church, if not full excommunication or having our names withdrawn. And so 30,000, yeah, that's almost up to my July 2017 video. They're close. But yeah, there's too many people that are coming and saying, "Who are you? What are you talking about? I don't understand." So there it is. It's the playlist of 9 videos that I would recommend. That is the whole lecture that they gave. And I don't understand why they did them in segments other than they wanted to get it onto YouTube quicker. Why not have a full combined version? I don't understand. But let's see. 4. And yeah, there it is. It's under what else we found. Comparing the evidence. Hey, there it is. Compounding of evidence, themes, phrases, proper nouns, plagiarisms, frequently used words. But there it is. Under what else we found, Sidney Rigdon. Whoop! And Cowdery is sparse, but he was the major scribe. Why is he sparse? He worked for a whole month and a half to get the whole Book of Mormon written down as dictated by Joseph Smith. Once you correct the date of section 10. It's not 1828, it's 1829. Somebody changed it. As I did that video not too long ago. And then notice Parley P. Pratt. Now, Mormons complain and cry, well, Sidney Rigdon didn't join the church until December of 1830. How could he have written it if he didn't even know about it? Parley P. Pratt. He was one of the followers of Sidney Rigdon at his church in Ohio. And Sidney Rigdon knows him. And if you know that Sidney Rigdon, because of his injury as a kid, his brother says he was injured as a kid and was unable to write his own sermons, but he wanted to preach, he loved to preach, and so he would get his library, hang out at the bookstores, printing presses, rather, and have collect books when they were published. Thus, how he got Solomon Spaulding's manuscript. So he already had it in his possession, and would write his sermons using the words from other books, because of the brain injury that he incurred as a kid. And so it's not malicious intent, it's not deceptive fraud. He just loved to preach and needed assistance, and that was his method of overcoming his weakness, to make it strong. And so you can see that they had already planned on how to get the Book of Mormon to Sidney Rigdon with, some distance away from it, so as not to expose what was going on, because there are people trying to murder the Smiths, to murder anybody who's in possession of the 116 original pages, not the ones that Martin Harris wrote per se. And so, yeah, you can see what they were doing. They put the majority of Pratt's work, because Parley P. Pratt, he was a writer, he did hymns, and so Rigdon knew about this, had his stuff, made sure his stuff was put in the 116 pages. And then he put a little bit after Jacob. It's hard to see. Maybe if I blew it up. Yeah, after, in between Enos and Mosiah. So what about the other stuff? I guess they don't have the other stuff. But yeah, after Enos, that part of that bridging portion into the major portion that Sidney Rigdon was involved in. Though it's clear Sidney Rigdon was involved in much of that at the end anyway. And does show that Sidney Rigdon had some part in the rewritten portion of the 116 pages. And so you can see from section 10 what they were doing is that they just changed authorship, included some of the stuff from the original that Sidney Rigdon had been working on from the original 116 pages of William Morgan. But clearly Joseph Smith Sr. had to put in his new Israelite religion, Jewish mysticism, and his Yorkites, Knights Templar knowledge into story form with the Tree of Life and Solomon's Temple when they get to the Promised Land, etc. So you see that. And then a little bit near the end of the book, so that Pratt is again reminded of his own writing to get excited. And sure enough, it worked. Parley P. Pratt thought this was an awesome book. And so he took it back to his congregation, and what do you know, Sidney Rigdon, oh great, let's go find out. I love this book. This is awesome. It's as if I would have written it. And so he joins in December. And what do? They reward Sidney Rigdon. They pay him immediately upon his joining the church by working on the Joseph Smith translation, which he left the Campbellite Baptists because Alexander Campbell only wanted to do the New Testament and did only the New Testament revision. And Sidney wanted to do the whole Bible and revise the whole Bible. And so, as payment, here you go, let's work on it. Revelation from God. And then they checked Isaiah and Malachi as well. And others have done the comparisons with other plagiarized works, as they do talk about it, but it doesn't seem like they explain the listing of plagiarisms. They just show where plagiarism takes place. And the late war is online, showing side-by-side comparisons with the Book of Mormon. The guy did extensive work, did not give a key code. Otherwise, it was an excellent work, very good fruit by which we can judge. That's the whole point of faith to knowledge, is that once you obtain the knowledge, people can see the knowledge. It doesn't stay in your head as a spiritual witness, because nobody can judge a spiritual witness. I guess you're safe from judgment. No. People now can judge you as a fraud because you're keeping it as a sacred secret and demanding other people accept your sacred secret. We can't judge you other than we have to judge it as a fraud. And that's why it's important that when you get inspiration, you make it. You turn it into reality. You make it flesh. So if you get an idea for a boat, like Noah and Nephi, you make the boat so that others can judge. See, Laman and Lemuel were mocking Nephi. Oh, your spiritual witness says you can build a boat. You can't build a boat. You're a sucker and a loser. He builds the boat. And they go, oh, I guess he can build a boat. Nephi confounds them with the results of his spiritual witness. Because Laman and Lemuel can now judge for themselves that Nephi is good. And they still wanted to murder him. Alright. So, yeah. Yes, I veered way off topic. As Mormons are born and raised and circumcised in the Great and Abominable Church, we are told in prophecy, even though we don't realize it, there are an underground movement of Mormons and ex-Mormons who know of the one mighty and strong and the man like Moses, etc. But the church keeps insisting, nope, just Jesus. It's only Jesus. Nothing but Jesus. Move along. Obey. Pay your tithing. Carry on. And so now we know who the false Christ is of the Great and Abominable Church. And as a result, even though Mormons marry within Mormonism, it's the Great and Abominable Church. And so the women of the church are exactly like Dinah. Exactly like the daughters of the sons of God. They are marrying Mormons of the Great and Abominable Church. They don't have authority. Ta-da! Now you understand what the Genesis stories are prophesying about. But it is prophesied that from the Great and Abominable Church, parents who are sealed in the Great and Abominable Church's temple, and I've gone over with you, it's the Los Angeles temple, Temple of Angels. Angels herald the announcement of the birth, and the Christ himself of Mormonism is to be endowed with the washing and anointing of Amen, Christ, which Melchizedek is used in place of the name to avoid the too frequent repetition, in the Los Angeles temple as well. And so again, on your checklist, find somebody who went through the Los Angeles temple, and Nephi is his new name. Nephi comes to Joseph Smith. Knights Templar Egyptian gold treasure plates. The bloodline that's being referred to in Genesis. The human bloodline of the Mormon Messiah that Joseph Smith turned it all into for his religion, because they were of the Knights Templar with the York Rites, and that was how they were going to do it. They were I have to keep repeating it to my new audience. Alrighty. So now we can go to 35, right? God sends Jacob to the house of God, where he builds an altar, and the Lord appears to him. He renews the promise that Jacob shall be a great nation, and that his name shall be Yah, Prince of God, for the bloodline Christ of the latter days. That's why we are the house of Israel. That's why we're given the family lineage of Ephraim in our patriarchal blessings. And it's through that it comes from. So Jacob sets up an altar and pours a drink offering. That altars with the food and drink offerings have to do with the sacrament for the purpose of the latter-day Christ to come through his lineage. That's why he's doing the sacrament here on the altars. That's what the altars were for. They were in the Holy of Holies, where the statue of the deity was, and you put the offerings, or the priest did on the offerings, and they would be blessed, and then a portion would be given back to the one giving the offering. It's the same religious process. The origin of religion is going on here. And so Rachel bears Benjamin. Well, not she dies in childbirth. Did Rebecca already die, or she had yet to die? Rebecca's nurse dies. So there's a lot of death here. It doesn't look like Rebecca dies, though. So it's Rachel. Rachel. And again, I've got multiple languages going through my head, and it's screwing me up. And there's Ben-Ammon, not Ammon. It's with the Eye of Horus, rather than the, or is it the Yod? We'll check that. We'll check that right now. Where is it? Called him Benjamin. Okay, so 35:18 for the Blue Letter Bible. Because Paleo-Hebrew has two-letter words, and then a third is a prefix determinative, functions like an adjective, as I've been telling you. And yes, it is the Yod, which is the Zeta in Paleo-Hebrew for Zeus, as Zeus is the Hebrew god originally, even though Semitic Hebrew repronounces it as Yah, as you know it as Jehovah, the corrupted form of Yahweh. And then you get other people who think they're specialists, who have these other weird phonemes for Yahweh. You're all wrong. I explained it, that it was his new name after he finished the creation. Nobody tells you about that but me. Alright. And so Isaac even dies. So this is the death chapter. And Rachel is buried in Bethlehem. We have a sign in the heaven event of her death. That is fascinating. And I'd have to stop the video and do a whole bunch of research to figure that out. So I won't do this now. But that is interesting. Interesting. Anyway, Reuben, he lost Dinah. So what does he do? He goes to Bilhah. Is she the servant of Leah or Rachel's? I'm guessing Rachel's. Rachel's handmaid, yeah, Bilhah. And so he doesn't do the sister wife of his mom. He does the sister wife of Rachel, who dies. Because he needs somebody to be the heir to the throne, as the son of the seer is his name, as we went over previously in the other video. So, alrighty, let's get into it here. God said to Jacob, after the murder of the Shechemites, the Hamorites, I guess, Hamorites. Shechem is the prince. And so again, he's worried that people are going to murder him. And so here God says, run, flee, go to the temple, dwell at the temple. So where's the temple? It's in Egypt. Make an altar unto God. Thou feedest appeared with thee and fleddest from the face of Esau thy brother. So it's the same temple that he had dealings with his brother. The wrestling. Alright, then Jacob said to his household, put away the strange gods, the foreign gods, the false gods, and be clean and change your magic underwear. This is outerwear, guys. Brigham Young created the underwear. There was underwear previous, but it didn't have the marks of Freemasonry, square and compass. Go to the temple. Make thee an altar unto God. It's actually an offering of God, but we see the pillar that is raised again. Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, even a pillar of stone. That's the obelisk from Egypt. So again, confirmed, they're going to Egypt. And they sojourned in the terror of God. And Canaan was part of Egypt, but archaeological evidence does not support. I should be careful. There may obelisks in Canaan. Let's check. Ebishemu obelisk, Egyptian name of a Canaanite deity. Temple of Resheph. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. So there's a picture of it. Huh. That's cool. Got a picture of obelisks and cartouches of various kings. I'm going to need to acquire these. Dedicated to the Phoenician king Abishamu. Abi is father. Shem would be the name, I'm assuming, from the spelling in English. So the father of the name, Amen, of Byblos, Babel, Beirut, Lebanon. Isn't that interesting? Father of the name. The name, Osiris, who represents Father Amen and Son Amen Horus. The obelisk is decorated with 2 lines of inscription, hieroglyphic Egyptian. It was created in 1800 BCE. According to some scholars, that's the time period of Abraham, and was unearthed in the 1950s by Maurice Dunand in the Temple of the Obelisks. Okay, it's the 3rd oldest obelisk, the world's 3rd oldest obelisk, and by far the oldest obelisk found outside of Egypt. So the Temple of Obelisks, and the Temple of Reshef was an important Bronze Age temple structure in the World Heritage Site of Byblos. Oh, I'm getting all excited here. I'm going to stop and deal with this. I'm a kid in a candy store right now. Hold on. I'll be back. I love candy. Yeah, oh, that was awesome. So yes, as women get upset, obelisks are a phallic symbol. And the capstone is, yes, the crown that is circumcised. Need to be nice to each other. Don't vilify each other just because they're not you. Alright, so, wow, that was awesome. And so, yeah, the author apparently knows of Byblos. This is what we're talking about here, or the author is talking about, is Byblos. The house of God at Byblos, where the pillar was erected, where the Babylon king, or Babel king, redundant there, because Babylon is the king of Babel, which is Byblos, Beirut, Lebanon, where that site was found with all of the obelisks. And that's where Osiris beached, as I mentioned, and the king of Babel, that I've referred to in other videos, and even the Sunday school video when we talked about it, carved the cedar of Lebanon into a dedge pillar, not an obelisk, but a pillar nonetheless, of Osiris's symbol, which is one of the names in both Greek and Paleo-Hebrew letters in those alphabets, and is portrayed in Egyptian writing as well. And so yes, Babel plays a very significant part in the history of the world, as the Egyptians refer to it, and the Bible refers to it. And so, wow. This is awesome. All right. So yeah, we had Babel before. Where did I see Babel before? Was it when I looked on the internet, or is it here? I don't see it here. Because the Hivites were further up. Yeah, I'm not seeing Bethlehem. Okay, so I'm not. Yeah, it must have been on the internet. Okay. So yeah, I'm distracted. So it's basically the great and abominable church gods. And everybody is giving Jacob all the gods, all the earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under an oak, which was by Shechem. So oak is interesting because the cedars of Lebanon are closely matched to oak trees, because Ezekiel 17 has a parable about an eagle taking a branch or twig from a branch of the cedar of Osiris that was carved to America in that parable. And so yes, that's Northern California. And la 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 I might need to pause again. There's text. It's scripture. And the church refuses to add it to our scriptures. Our monoletter. Hotep, yeah, Moses' father. Or his son, Moses. Interesting. Interesting. And then especially this. Oh, look at that. We've got more scriptures, guys. The Sebek Ku stela. That's the Pharaoh's stela. Sebek is the representative of Pharaoh, and thus, in facsimile number 1, the crocodile alligator is Sebek, the god of Pharaoh. Ta-da! We've got scripture, guys. Don't you want to belong to the restored church of Joseph Smith? Have all this new scriptures? I just need time to translate it. I need to have people back off trying to murder me, destroy my life, and economically sanction me. But, yeah, location is in the West Bank. I believe that would be Gaza. So it is part of Israel. Jerusalem, Yep. It is by Bethlehem, as designated by Constantine as well. Which is referred to here, as I mentioned. Alright, so Shechem is the northern kingdom's capital when they split from each other. After Solomon dies, Rehoboam and Jeroboam go their separate ways. The one to Shechem is the capital for the northern kingdom, and Jerusalem is the capital for the southern kingdom. According to the legend, because nobody can prove it in archaeology. But you can find it in Egyptian. It's all there in Egypt. Alright, so let's see. Gave them all their earrings and gods. And buried them under an oak in Shechem, Israel. See that? Israel, Ephraim, oak, cedar of Lebanon, Osiris, dead, Horus restores the kingdom. And they journeyed, and great and abominable church, false gods, and crisping pins, and twinkling of their toes. In Isaiah, for the daughters of Zion, haughty, the haughties, the haughty daughters of Zion. The sons of, or the daughters of the sons of God. So Jacob came to Luz, which is in the land of Canaan. That is Bethel. There's a difference. Luz is a different letter in Paleo-Hebrew than the Yod, which is the Zeta, which you'd think would be the Z, Zion. Not to be confused with Zion. So frustrating. Alright, so built an altar at the house of God, or Luz, in the land of Canaan, and called the place God, house of God, because there God appeared unto him when they fled from the face of his brother. Let's see, Deborah dies. They call it nurse. She helps with births of babies, like a midwife, but she's the sister wife, and is not mentioned as being the wife of Isaac, through whom he had children with, but nonetheless, that's what she would have been, as Bilhah and Zilpah were to Rachel and Leah, and Hagar to Sarah, etc. That's the origin of sister wives. They were to help the actual queen, or the birthright blessing wife. And she was buried beneath the house of God under an oak. And the name of it was Alon Bakuth. And they don't say why it was named Alon Bakuth. Let's see. And God appears again. So Pharaoh comes to Jacob and blessed him. And Pharaoh said, "Thy name is Jacob. Thy name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall thy name. And thy name," and he called his name Israel. New names can only be given by Pharaoh, and that's God. So if you're throwing in Christian bias, you're going to be wrong. And Pharaoh said, "I am the Almighty Amen, Sun God," and tells Jacob to have sex. And that's the only way you're going to be a nation of nations. You can't do it by keeping it as a spiritual witness. You actually gotta do it. Gotta have those babies. You can't go around saying, "God blessed me to have a large posterity. Nations will be born unto me." Because if no woman wants to be the woman, you ain't gonna fulfill your blessing. And kings shall come out of thy loins. Land which I gave to Abraham and Isaac. It's the same Pharaoh. Wow. To thee I will give it, and to thy seed after thee will I give the land. So the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the Pharaoh of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who is Amen. Ta-da! The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is Son Amen, a mortal man. Isn't that great? And Jacob set up an obelisk where he talked with him, a pillar of stone. And so the author knows of the making of obelisks at Beirut, Lebanon, but apparently it was already covered up, so that it needed to be archaeologically dug up and found in 1950, whenever it was that it said it was found. So he knows of it in Canaan, but is telling a different story, giving different place names for it, and coded place names as its house of God, which is temple. And so it's going back and forth by the author when it should be Egypt, but he's talking Canaan, which is Egypt, but he's not. Don't take it literally. Don't turn it into history. Don't merge it and try to harmonize it. You will be wrong. You need to look for the latter-day patterns for what's going on right now. Bethel journeyed from the house of God, came to Ephrath. And so instead of Ephraim, it's Ephrath, the feminine version. And Rachel travailed, and she had hard labor. And heartbreaking, she dies. And she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Ben-Amen. And it's the Zeta, Z, Yod for the creation hieroglyph of Nut on top, Shu, their father, separating her from her brother Geb, Adam and Lilith. Creation. So the son of the creator, who is men, the Melchizedek, high priest and king, the creator, the Melchizedek creator, who is Amen. That's what son Ben-Amen And so Benoni is the one, father calls it the other. My dad's father, my grandfather, he's Louis Benoni Goodsell. That's where they got the name from. Okay, Rachel died. Was buried in the way to Ephrath, which is Bethlehem. You see that? See, the Jews are looking for a mortal man to save the Jews. Jeremiah 23, starting in verse 5. And thus Jesus doesn't fit this. But he's also understood to be of the house of Ephraim. Not a Jew per se, though he will be through the King David, a descendant of King David. And so, yeah, it's kind of important that Joseph Smith had the majority of Mormons be from the house of Ephraim because of this. That the sign in the heavens of Virgo at her left hand is right there at the womb where babies come out, and she's holding sheaves of wheat, and the house of bread, Bethlehem, house of bread. And Ephrath, the female of Ephraim, the birthright blessing son of Joseph, who usurped it from his brother Manasseh. So you see what the author is doing here with the wording and the naming that he's doing. And so, yeah, mother dies. Just like my mother on the 21st of December last year. 77 years old. Isn't that interesting? Alright. And Jacob set up a pillar upon her grave, and it's there unto this day. So he's apparently aware of a place of pillars, and we're to assume, I guess, that there is in Ephrath, which is Bethlehem, because you notice it's Ephrath, not Bethlehem. Constantine is the one who designated the name Bethlehem where it is. And so you've got to be careful about imposing literal history and imposing created history, merging it with the story that's being told here, as a redactor is saying unto this day. Because we're therefore assuming that there's an obelisk outside of Beirut, Lebanon, Babel. And I didn't see that. So, anyway, moving on. And so, Israel journeyed, rather than Jacob journeyed, and spread his tent beyond the Tower of Edar. And it came to pass. We gotta check. We're in 2nd Adar today. The first day of 2nd Adar. Is Edar the same? Why don't you have my search in here? Ba 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 ba. Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, okay. Different. Adar, even though it's the last month of the religious year, it's has the prefix determinative of the Aleph or Alpha, and interesting. Okay, but it's the sun symbol for this location that is mentioned here. Tower of Edar. And Ud is for month or menstrual cycle, and R would then, in this particular case, if that's the word, be the suffix determinative for God, the God of the month. And so it's the tower of the God of the month is where that is. And so it's a moon deity, and the name of the place is for a moon deity of some kind that would be involved there. See, it came to pass when Israel. See, now they're mixing the names, Jacob and Israel now. That Reuben went and lay across your great brass bed. And they're not using no, his father's concubine, through Rachel, the one who just died. And Israel heard it. Now the sons of Jacob, the usurper, were 12. Joseph gets a double portion, though, so you get 13 with Ephraim and Manasseh filling in for Joseph. And then they give a genealogy here. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. Then Simeon and Levi, who got busted. And then Judah. So that's important to know and understand, because Levi is through whom Moses comes from, as Levi is denied the birthright and blessing status, for Judah to now take it over. And out of Levi, the great and abominable church, comes Moses to restore the church. See how that works? And then Joseph, likewise, comes from the great and abominable church, goes to Egypt, becomes the second of all Egypt, and restores the original church of Esau. So you see this pattern repeated over and over and over and over and over again. And Jews, in order to know their Torah, have to repeat it over and over and over and over again. And they even, in the synagogues, read the Torah. They have a set schedule for reading the Torah, and they have days on their calendar of when you start and when you end, and start all over again. And so this is the reason why, whether they know it or not. And so, yeah, Jacob is 160 years old when he dies. Code. And he goes to Mamre. Interesting. In the city of Arba, which is Hebron, as they're giving you a clue as to the dating of the text by the author, or the redactor of the author's text. Because remember, if we cannot confirm this translation or portion in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I'm pretty sure we can, it gives us the dating of when this was added in. And so if it was not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, you now know that the Masoretes added it and are the redactors of the text. And that gives you the date of when it was put in. Whereas if it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls, that now gives you the date of when it was put in. And what they're talking about here. When Hebron was around. And he gave up a ghost. I'm believing it would be Ruah. 35:29. So it's like the breath, which is often translated as spirit by Christians. No, it is a different word, or am I in the right? Ghost gave up, Jacob died, and died. Okay. It is a different word. And it's the word for Goya, if you're familiar with that, from X-Files. Comes back to life, being made from the soil. I preferred the X-Files when they were focused on the main theme of space aliens taking over the FBI to overthrow the world and have everybody implanted with the space slime to be possessed as aliens, alien-human hybrids. That's what I was interested in. And it got cool at the end, sort of, as they went to the Indian ruins in Southwest America, whether it was Arizona or New Mexico. I think it was New Mexico. Yeah. My parents took me to one of the places out in that area. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. Alright. So, it's different than breath of life. And so think of it in terms of that creature that Chris Carter had in the X-Files instead. Brought back to life. Alright, now 36. Generations of Esau, who is Edom, are set forth. Because by their generation, when they're writing this, it's Edom, and they're giving them a different name previously as Esau, as they're just trying to tell a story and taking familiar stuff, but explaining it wasn't back then. And so he took wives of the daughters of Canaan, but she's a Hittite. Canaan is not the Hittites. Canaan are Egyptians. Zebulun, the Hivites. So Canaan, Hittite, and Hivites. Another sister of Nebajoth. Ada. Okay, so apparently Ada, and it's close to Judith. And there's some problems because Judith is not listed here. But Judah, Judith, it just doesn't have the feminine ending. It's here as the feminine ending is the other version of the Masoretes, which is the more common one understood. But why then is Judah male? Let's see how they're spelling this. Yep. It's the menstrual cycle moon phases name. It's the sun symbol at first, instead of the Yod for the Hebrew god Yah, who is Zeus, who is sun god. They just put right in the sun symbol for Judith in this place. So there she is, as she's now the wife of the should have been sun god, but Jacob usurped his birthright and blessing. Fascinating. So this is all first-hand stuff. Nobody else knows this information that I know. I'm the decipherer of Paleo-Hebrew. So as I'm going over giving you translation work, I've only published the script. I haven't published the vocabulary, and I haven't published translation stuff. And so I'm mixing vocabulary and translation for you in these videos all these years because I've been focused on the latter days, trying to warn you about the latter days, as these are all prophesying about the latter days. So we're saving many birds with one stone, because I don't like to kill birds. I like birds. And so, yeah, she is Judith. And so she gives birth to the god Faz. Fuzzy Bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear. Fuzzy Wuzzy had lots of hair. Fuzzy Wuzzy told lots of jokes. Many people laughed at his jokes. The two Germans, I can't remember their names. Can't remember. Ralph also told jokes. Alright, so we need to go back to 36. See, the Wikipedia page on this, they don't have a clue. And they don't know what happened to Judith. They don't know. I know. I just revealed it to you. But there's sun god, Ruel, for the second wife. Name shall be sun god. Similar to Samson, which is sun king, but the different name for sun. The Ruel is through the Egyptian version of sun, of Ra. Whereas Samson is the Hebrew name for sun, or Semitic Hebrew technically. It is understood in Paleo-Hebrew because the M is in between the two water symbols, and the M has a water symbol with a J stroke for a human, and so thus the high priest in between the waters that are divided at creation, and thus the sun that crosses the sky between the two waters. Elphaz, the god of The file's alright. And because that's more of the iota, because there's a switch going on here. It's not the Z in zeta. But depending on the meaning would determine whether it's supposed to be the zeta of Paleo-Greek or Greek versus the Paleo-Hebrew original, or the Semitic, the Semitic version of it. Yeah. But yeah, the god of Faz, and so there's a difference depending on Aramaic or Paleo-Hebrew. The Aramaic, as used here, is the house symbol. So the house of the staff is that symbol, which is the staff of Set, but it's the scepter for kings and pharaohs. So the house of the king, the god of the house of the king, is the name of the firstborn of Judith. But that's Aramaic. Paleo-Hebrew, it's not quite a J stroke, sort of, but yeah, it would. The sky is the line above, and then the J stroke. So the man of heaven, which would be Osiris, and then the lightning bolt would be for Zeus. And so it's just another name for Zeus. So the god Zeus, technically, which would be Jupiter. And same names, Yah, son of Yah, Zeus, son of Zeus, but in Greek they had Hercules or Perseus, and others of mortal women that he had sex with, and pissed off Hera. You need to watch Babe Watch BC. Hercules, The Amazing Adventures, with Kevin Sorbo. Interesting. Okay, and then Ruel there. So you can see they're naming their kids as if the birthright blessing bloodline is still through them. They still have the authority. They're the great and abominable church now, and are still naming things after as if they were the true church, similar to Egypt. In Abraham, they were told that they lose the birthright and the blessing status, but they still claim the birthright blessing status from Abraham with their priesthood of Son Amen, and everything in their culture is based upon Adam's religion and order. And so you see that being played out here as well. And then Duke. No, it's not Duke. Duke of Earl. Duke of Earl. Mount Seir is where Esau dwelt, which is Edom. And that is where Jethro comes from, who is also Ruel. Yeah. Hold on here. Hold on. These are the ones Moses goes to marry the woman who is stubborn and the camel doesn't like her, and she sneaks out after Moses and Pharaoh are fooling around at their honorary ceremony. Prince of Egypt cartoon is what I'm referring to. Jethro's daughter. He's called Ruel. Yeah, interesting. Not interesting. So it'd be in Exodus. Signs. Burning bush. So he's called Jethro there. And 2, daughter of Levi. Ruel, yeah. Same name. Yep, Esau. So he goes, literally, to Edom. And Gershom. Oh, that's the name of the son. Zipporah. And Midian. Let me check this. Because this does have is Midian the same as Edom. Midian, Moab, and Edom. Yeah, there you have it. Symbolism. As Moses comes from the great and abominable church line of Levi, having murdered Shechem and his father Hamor, and loses the birthright blessing line as Reuben passes on it. Simeon, joining Levi to murder, loses the status, and so it goes to Judah. And Judith is given the son name as her new name after the marriage. And and then Esau is Edom, which is the land of Midian. And Moses goes to Midian, which is Edom, which is where Esau's people are, and he gets the priesthood from Jethro. Goes to the top of the mountain from Jethro. So you see that great and abominable church in Egypt, great and abominable church with Jethro to become the true restorer of Joseph. Or Jacob, depending on which one. So, yeah, cool stuff. Children of Israel. Covenant with Abraham, Yitzhak, and Jacob. Pharaoh remembered them. So, yeah, interesting. So we are done with the missing portions, aren't we? Genesis 36? Yeah, because it's all genealogy. And then people died. Edomites. Thus leading into Moses. So you see how the stories all tie in together and yet are parallel stories, all relating to the same thing for the latter days.